Hi, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Barrett.
And we are Bionic Fitness.
Have you guys ever heard of foam rolling? Hey. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of foam rolling and how it can help.
So your muscles are made up of strands of muscles, fibers, and those are kind of collected into bundles, and each of those bundles make up the muscle body itself. Each of those layers are surrounded by a connective tissue called fascia.
So foam rolling, like massage, actually helps to loosen up that fascia as well as the muscles. If you've ever had a massage, them pushing down and lengthening those muscles is what's going to lengthen that fascia, just like foam rolling.
It's kind of like a rolling pin in baking when you're rolling out the dough and elongating it, right? Your body is made up of a web of fascia that kind of connects all of it all together.
It's like a big glove as well that surrounds all of your tissues. It's got its own independent lines that actually can get tight. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to lengthen those fascial lines and how to lengthen the fascia and the muscle tissue in your body.
But first we'll go through a few options in terms of like what to buy in terms of foam rolling, what's good for you, right?
So you'll see some foam rollers out there that look like they're made up of pool noodle material. Those generally aren't great because they easily get smushed down and they get shaped to your body and they don't last for very long.
If you're extremely tight, it can be beneficial for you because it's a gentler, softer roll. But like Barrett said, it's not ideal for most people.
You'll also see ones like these, which are basically like a dense foam. These can be great if you are tight because they can be soft when you roll on them, even though they do have a little bit of firmness to them. You'll also see some that are made up of styrofoam, and those are quite stiff and hard. If you've already been foam rolling for a bit, you might want to upgrade to those. As well, there's a last type that has a hard plastic interior and is generally hollow. You can hear that plastic, and it's coated with a nice dense foam. These are probably the hardest ones that you want to buy, and these will be, well, they'll make you a little bit sore after using them.
These ones are great to travel with, though. You can shove your underwear and socks inside of them. It won't take too much space up in your luggage, and after a long plane ride when you're feeling tight, these are great to roll out. Yeah. I also have used a vibrating foam roller at gyms, and I love them. They're really great. They kind of shake up your nerves and signal them to let go of your body. It also feels like a massage. It feels really great.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so I'm going to get Brandon to start with a few lower body moves to begin with. So like we said, it helps to release those tight muscles and tight fascia. So he's starting off on the quadriceps, which are the big muscles on the front of your thighs. And basically all he's doing is just down on his elbows. He's rolling from his knees up to his hips and his junk, basically. You don't want to ever roll over those knees. That's going to compromise that joint, and we don't want that.
And you don't want to roll over your junk. It's going to compromise your junk, and we don't want that either.
We don't want that either. That's great. You can actually he can move his feet around to hit different fibers in those quadriceps. He can also shift from one side to the other to put more pressure on one leg or the other, and that's going to help alleviate the tight parts. You want to just find those tight muscles or knots and work on those and try and release those.
What I'm doing right now is I'm hitting the front corner of the leg, which is the muscle called the vastus lateralis. I don't want to come all the way to the side and hit the IT band. About 5 to 10 years ago, it became a fad in the fitness industry where people were hitting their IT bands. IT bands are not muscles. No. They don't contract, and they're meant to keep a certain amount of tension in your leg and in your hip and in your knee. And when you foam roll them out, it's going to be painful, and it also is going to cause loosening through those joints, which we don't want, right? If you're feeling really tight or you're having knee or hip issues, it's coming from a tight muscle, not a tight band of connective tissue. And those muscles are usually TFL and glute med in those hips. So make sure that you're hitting those and not the IT bands themselves.
We're going to go over a roll for the TFL specifically a little bit later. But right now he's rolling that outside part of that quad, which is great, and that's going to help loosen up those quadriceps as well.
While I'm here, let's do TFL.
Yeah. So shifting up into the top above that, just below that hip bone, right at the very top, and above the top of that quadricep is the TFL on that outside corner of your hip. If you can see it right here on myself, it's right about here, just below that pelvic bone, the top of that bone. And you basically just want to shift up and down on that. You can also rotate a little bit forward or backwards if you find that you're not hitting it. It's a big knot. You might feel it. If you sit at a desk, it can often be tight and sore.
If you roll backwards, you can also hit a little bit of glute med, which is great. This is not IT band. This is cool. Feels good.
The glute med is that dimple in that glute muscle on the side of your butt. Yes.
Good.
Good. While we're here too, why don't we do some adductors? So Brandon's going to switch the position of that roller. Yeah. And then he's going to put it just on the inside of the thigh, just in towards his groin. And he's rolling from the knee joint all the way into that groin, and that's going to hit the adductors. Those are the tight inner thigh muscles that often can be tight if you sit at the desk, or if you're lacking a little bit of ab strength, they can be tight as well.
If you have an anterior pelvic tilt, your adductors are probably tight.
Oftentimes they are super tight, and this can be a little painful. So sometimes just laying your leg on that roller without rolling it very much, and then shifting it up and down the leg to put that pressure can release that tight muscle as well.
Good.
Okay, great. Why don't we move on to those hamstrings? Those are the muscles on the back of your thighs. These can be tight as well because of that desk positioning, or if you have an anterior pelvic tilt, they'll often compensate for those glutes, your butt muscles. And this can be good for some people, but some people might not be able to do this because of the length of their arms, unfortunately. You can also put a little bit more pressure on one leg by lifting and crossing, just like Brandon did right there, and that can get a deeper roll and stretch those muscles out even more. That's great. Why don't we move on to the calves? So if he rolls the roller down a little bit, like again, you have to support yourself with your upper body. If you find that that's difficult too, then there are other means of stretching out or rolling out those hamstrings or calves.
When you're pulling when you're supporting your own body weight, just make sure you're not dumping through the shoulders. Shoulders down and back, abs engaged. Nice, good posture while you're doing it.
This can be a workout into itself, actually, as Brandon can feel right now. You can also do the same thing. You can cross one leg over, get a deeper roll into those calves. Those calves can be quite tight, and we want to stretch them and roll them out. That's great. Excellent. Next one we're going to do is your glutes. So he can sit right on top of that roller. Good. And then he's going to cross one ankle over the opposite knee and then lean into the side that he's crossed to hit that glute. These might not be super tight on some people. If you find this isn't really doing much, then that's fine. You don't have to roll them out. Some people, if you work your glutes often, if you're doing lots of squats and lots of deadlifts, you might want to dig into those glutes. Good. That looks great. You can also switch around, shift your angle a little bit to get a different area of that glute or a different area of the hip as well. You can hit the glute med this way too. Great. The next one I want to do is the lats. So this is a great upper body one. Depending on how often you work those lats, they can be often really tight. But what he's going to do is he's going to move right down into that armpit area in here, right up there, all the way down. And he's not really on the rib cage necessarily. He's kind of rolled back a little bit, so he's digging into the bigger part of the muscle in the back right in here. This is a nice release for everybody that does a lot of back work. Great. The last one we're going to do is the mid back and upper back. Good. So he's positioned the roller in his mid back there. Good. And now as he's got his feet planted on the floor here and he's lifting his hips off the ground, using his abs to support, he's got his head supported with his hands, and then he's going to roll down his rib cage just into the bottom part of that rib cage. You don't want to roll past the rib cage because that's where your kidneys are, and that can cause some discomfort for some people. It's also not great for those organs as well.
We want you to be really careful with your spine, right? Some people have vulnerable spines and this much weight could be too much. So be really careful, feel it out. If it doesn't feel good to you, don't do this one.
Exactly. Another great one too is if he takes those elbows and pulls them inwards, that's actually going to expose a lot more musculature in his upper back, and rolling that out can be nice too. If you have some knots in there, it's probably because you're tight through your chest, but it can help to relieve that pressure as well. Okay,
great.
That's great. So hopefully you guys have found some of this helpful and interesting. Take your time with it. Foam rolling can be a little painful at the start because of that tension and that tight fascia. So just take it nice and slow. Do as much as you can. Breathe through it as well, of course. Getting that oxygen to your body is really important.
If you're finding that stretching isn't producing a lot of results for you, it might be issues around the tendons versus the muscles. That's a bit of a complicated issue that we can go into later.
Yeah.
But this is a good alternative. Maybe foam rolling is better for you, and maybe you should try that out instead of your stretching or in addition to.
Another thing which we'll probably do a video on as well is hypermobility. If you are hypermobile, like I am, you'll often find that stretching can be counterproductive. It pulls a little too much on those joints, and it's not great for your body. So foam rolling is great for that instead. It helps to loosen up those muscles without compromising your joint stability.
And when you have loose muscles, you can do things like this.
The split!
Oh,
yeah.
healthy joint.
So happy foam rolling, guys, and happy exercise, and keep yourself nice and healthy and fit.